Good afternoon and welcome to our presentation on using context-specific word lists to analyse the lexicon of academic ELT textbooks. My name is Madarbakus-Using and I am currently at Nagoya University of Commerce and Business in Nagoya in Japan.
And my name is Benson. I'm currently at the University of Aizu, which is also in Japan.
So today's presentation will look at the following. So first of all, we will outline the textbooks which we used in our current study and the importance of textbooks in language learning. And then we'll look specifically at the research that has been done in looking at vocabulary in textbooks. We'll then give you a brief overview of our current situation and also the methods that we use for our study before we outline the results and pedagogical implications for this particular study. There'll also be some time for questions and answers at the end. So first of all, it's important for us to understand textbooks and how they are used in the second language learning context. Textbooks are the key component of the second language classroom, as Richard states, and much of the language teaching that occurs around the world today could not take place without the use of commercial textbooks specifically. Maris agrees with this, saying that there is a significant effect on language classes and teaching methodology dependent on the textbooks which are used in the classroom. There are many advantages of using a textbook in language learning, which includes looking at quality assurance, so basically using publishers who are renowned and known around the world. They're written by experts, so these publishers do recruit experts in the field, so then they know how to use teaching methodology, which is based on their research. And also looking at current theoretical approaches in teaching methodology, which look specifically at updating all of these commercial textbooks, and then they have all of the latest methods which are being used in research. Textbooks are also systematically planned and developed. So as we know, they usually run from Unit 1 to 10 or Unit 12. And this is designed so, and then it does get more difficult as the units go on and helps the learner progress in their line of study. There is specific attention given to vocabulary in textbooks and curriculum design, which Stuart will talk about a little bit more now.
So let's look at vocabulary in text. As he was saying, that vocabulary is usually given special attention in the curriculum design, but Falls has actually said that this is a myth and that vocabulary is not actually accurately covered in the textbooks. There have been several studies that have looked at the vocabulary in textbooks, as you can see from the first 3 studies here. They looked at the Success, Headway, and Pathfinder, and their analysis of the vocabulary in these textbooks showed that they did not contain the first 2,000 words in English, so the general service list. This is quite scary when you think course books are not covering the most frequent words in English, and these are the most important. Matsuk and Hirsch also did a lexical analysis looking at the new Headway upper intermediate textbook, and they found out that only 93.4% of the first 2,000 words were covered in this textbook. And if you add the academic word list, the AWL by Cox at 2000, this only got up to 95.5%. Again, for an upper intermediate textbook, this is quite scary. You would think an upper intermediate textbook should adequately cover the first 2,000 words and maybe getting into the 3,000 to 4,000 words, but it doesn't cover it here. A more recent study is O'Loughlin 2012. He looked at the New English File textbook series, and his analysis discovered that the textbook only covered less than half of the first 1,500 words in English, which is even more scary. So when you're thinking about this, in conclusion, that the textbooks are not covering the high frequency vocabulary, so the most frequent, the most important vocabulary in English. This means that supplementary materials are essential for students to get this knowledge of the high frequency vocabulary, and therefore we need to start analyzing the vocabulary in the textbooks. As you can see from the studies, all these studies have shown that actually these textbooks do not cover the high frequency vocabulary, and therefore teachers like ourselves need to start analyzing the vocabulary in our textbooks that we use in our teaching, so we can find out if they do actually cover the high frequency vocabulary.
So that leads us to our current situation and where we conducted our own research. So our context involved using 2 commercially published textbooks. So as you can see on your screen, we used World English 2, which is the same as the Common European Framework of Reference A2, or a pre-intermediate. And we also used a title entitled Keynote 2, which is also a level of A2, B1, or that would be pre-intermediate and intermediate. These 2 textbooks were used at a public university in Japan. So we used each of the textbooks for 1 semester over a 4-month period, and they were used with first-year non-English majors. So the methods that we used for the processing involved the following. So first of all, we scanned the 2 books as no digital versions are currently available. So we used OCR software to do that. And that literally was scanning each of the individual pages, saving them as documents, and then cleaning the text for analysis. This involved looking at abbreviations and writing those in, changing numbers from their figures to the written words, and being able to make sure that the profilers that we used were able to recognize all of the given words. We then ran the data through 2 vocabulary profilers. So the first one was the general word list profiler using the range program, which was created by Heatley et al. And then we used a context-specific vocab profiler, which was the new word level checker, which was updated by Mizumoto just last year. We also used 2 word lists. So this involved looking at Nation's 2012 BNC COCA 25,000 words plus supplementary lists. And also we used the context-specific new JASIT 8000, which was again recently updated by JASIT in 2016.
So a little bit more information about the general word list and the context-specific word list. So for the general word list, we use Nation's 2012 BNC COCA word list. This contains 25,000 words or word families. These 25,000 words are ordered in 1,000 base word lists. So there's 25, and each base word list has 1,000 words. They're ordered in terms of frequency. So the first 1,000 words are the most frequent in English, then the second, then the third, blah, blah, blah. So these are the general words. For the context-specific word list, we use the JASIT 8000, as Naheem was saying. As the name suggests, there are 8,000 words, but these are lemmas compared to word families. There are 8 word lists in total. Again, they are ordered in frequency, and this word list was created for Japanese tertiary level students. So we wanted to compare whether this textbook is suitable for, 1, is it suitable for general? And 2, is it suitable for the context that the textbooks were used in? So after the analysis, here are the following results. So this is the table for World English 2. So this is the lower level of the lower level textbook out of the 2. And this was analyzed through the BNC COCA 25,000 words plus the supplementary lists. So I have put 2 red lines here to show you the base where we want to get. Many studies have looked at what knowledge, where is the baseline for knowledge. 95% comprehension is needed to understand a text, and the operable percentage would be about 98%. So these are the 2 lines to show you where did each of the units reach 95% and 98%. So as you can see from the results, knowledge of the first 2,000 words reached 95%, and 4,000 words reached 98%. As you can see from the table as well, there was no increase through the textbooks. So actually, you can see most of them reached 2,000 words, 2,000 word level, but it's all over the place. Yep, there were some outliers as well. As you can see in Unit 1, for example, it got to reach 98%. It was the 5,000 words. Students need to know 5,000 words. And in Unit 4, they needed to know 6,000 words. So this outlier is definitely going to affect the knowledge and to affect the difficulty for students. So for example, Unit 2 is going to be a lot easier for them compared to Unit 4. So you would think that a textbook should go up in difficulty, but unfortunately this did not as well. So looking at the Keynote 2, the second book that was analyzed, Again, I have made the two red lines to show you where it reached 95% threshold and the 98% threshold. To reach the 95% threshold, students needed to know 3,000 words, and to reach the 98% threshold, they needed to know 5,000 words. Again, there was no increase throughout the textbook, but there was an increase between World English 2 and Keynote 2. So for World English 2, it was 2,000 to 4,000, and for Keynote 2, it was 3,000 to 5,000. But again, there were some outliers. As you can see in Unit 1, for example, students need to know the first 4,000 words and all the way up to the 8,000 words to comprehend 98%. So again, as a student getting this textbook, looking at Unit 1, it would be far too difficult for them in Unit 1, but then you go to Unit 2 and it gets a lot easier. So this is definitely going to affect the motivation of students. So now we analyzed the textbooks using the JESA 8000, the context-specific word list. This is a bit different to the BNC COCA. The levels are ranged for the level of their education. So as you can see at the bottom, you've got level 1 and level 2 are for junior high school students, all the way up to level 8, where this is short books and novels, and this is basically their fluent. So we're trying to aim for level 4, level 5, so start of university, mid-university, where these textbooks were actually used at the tertiary level universities. So if you look at the text, or the table, sorry, you can see that knowledge of these textbooks, students would need to know 3,000 to understand 95% and 8,000 to understand 98%. As you can see, coverage is all over the place from 3,000 to 8,000. That's a massive disparity between 3 and 8,000. Some, so units 8, 9, 11, and 12 did not even actually reach 98%. So again, for Japanese tertiary level students, this is far too difficult. Moving on to the Keynote 2 analysis using the JESA 8000. Again, it's 3,000 words for 95% and 8,000 words for 98%. Again, coverage is all over the place, and all do not reach 98%, as you can see from the table. You only reach 95%, but they never actually do reach 98%. So this is for Keynote 2. For Japanese tertiary level students, this is far too lexically demanding, it's quite scary.
So just to summarize the pedagogical implications from the commercial textbooks, we can see that the appropriate levels were in line with those which were stated on the textbook. So we could see that World English was more of a pre-intermediate level and Keynote was more of an intermediate level. However, if we go to the actual classroom and we think about the teaching context, we can see that these textbooks are too lexically demanding for Japanese learners. And these were something that the professors at the university noted every time that they use these textbooks. So it is very, very important to consider the teaching context and the environment, irrespective of what the actual levels are on the book. So our best course of action, Stuart, I think this is over to you. What should we do?
Definitely, we need to focus on making in-house. The commercially published textbooks, they are too lexically demanding for Japanese tertiary level students. So we need to bring in in-house textbooks. And this is exactly what we did.
Well, I'm happy that you said that, because we are looking at adding to our current situation now. So we checked what the commercial textbooks were like, but we also wanted to see what the vocabulary was like in an in-house textbook. So we took one which was produced in-house, which was also a similar level. So this one was also at A2 or pre-intermediate, but this one was used at a private university in Japan, but also with first year English majors this time.
So yeah, we ran the in-house text through BNC COCA, the general word list, and these are the results. So the knowledge to get to 95%, knowledge was needed of the first 3,000 words, and to understand 98%, students needed to know the 5,000 words. You can see there was consistency throughout the textbook units. However, there was no increasing degree of difficulty throughout the 8 units. there was consistency. Most of them were in the 3,000 to 5,000 range. This showed that it is level appropriate for tertiary level students. However, there were some outliers. So, for example, Unit 1 is 2,000 to 3,000, so it was quite difficult. And then there's a sudden demand for vocabulary in Unit 2 from 4,000 to 7,000. When we compared this to the JESIT 8,000, so the in-house text was made for Japanese tertiary level students, so this should be far more indicative of what students need for vocabulary. Again, the coverage was all over the place, unfortunately. So students needed to know the first 3,000 words to understand 95% of the textbook, all the way up to 8,000 words to understand 98% of the textbook. Most did reach 98%, except for Unit 5, which did not reach 98%. And again, this shows that while this was an in-house text made by teachers working at a tertiary education level in Japan, the lexical demand was not suitable for Japanese tertiary level students. So if we're going to go back to the pedagogical implications and thinking, okay, so what should we do? Even in-house texts are not suitable. Definitely we need to supplement these materials. So we need to bring in more materials to help the students understand the vocabulary in the textbooks, both commercially published textbooks and in-house textbooks. Some things we could do is we could add a glossary to the materials to help the students understand low frequency vocabulary or words that aren't necessarily important to learn right then and there. We could give them word lists, and we can give them access to and train them in using a dictionary, so they don't have to learn the word, spend time learning a word. They can just look at the meaning of the word and move on. We can also focus on some vocabulary learning strategies. Two vocabulary learning strategies is word cards. Nation 2013 definitely says this is a great learning strategy for students to learn. And another is from Guessing from Context from Clark and Nation 1980. This is a great vocabulary learning strategy that students should acquire.
So this leads us to our limitations and future research. So in this study, we noted that there were the following limitations. So basically, we did only use 2 of the commercial textbooks and also 1 of the in-house ones. So we could extend and we could broaden this study. So and then we do use other textbook titles, both in-house and with commercial publishers. There were identical incremental increases, so maybe we do need to think about more specifically the consistency by unit. Does this follow our expectations when we are following a textbook, or is it something which is maybe a little bit more random? We also need to think about different curriculum designers, which are better, using in-house textbooks, publishers, commercial publishers, and if there are any similarities or differences between the types of textbooks which they create. We also started looking at general versus specific word lists, but we realized that in this particular study, we looked at our teaching context, and of course there are other specific word lists which could be used in Korea, in China, and also in Europe, which we could also investigate further. So for future research, we can think more about other word types also. As we said, we looked more at the general word types, but we could look at perhaps academic vocabulary, or we could look at more technical vocabulary. We could also look more specifically at maybe the vocabulary in the 4 skills. So this was a very, very general overview of the language which was used in each unit. So something we'd like to do next is look at vocabulary specifically and even divide it up by productive and maybe receptive skills, or even by the 4 skills themselves, to see if there are any different levels of difficulty there. We also need to think more about supplementary materials and think about what type of materials are needed to bridge potential learning gaps. So now that we have these initial data to show us where the difficulties are, by conducting further research to look more specifically at the different skills, we can then perhaps go on to create supplementary materials to help our learners address those difficulties. So thank you for your time. We do have some references as well. So I think we do have some time for Q&A now, and we look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you.